Good morning. It's the 23rd of January 2025. You're very welcome back to the channel. I was banned there for almost 2 weeks, so it's nice to be back. One of the things I've always been on about for years and years, and even before I had any YouTube channel, was that about energy, of which I know a lot about. I am technically minded. I have built generators, steam engines and things as models mainly, and own generators, two of them. And I'm a customer of the Irish Electricity Supply Board all my life. Now, Donald Trump has taken over in the White House, as you know, and he's been signing a lot of executive orders, and one of them is that he has stopped all future leases, lettings, consents on federal lands onshore and federal seas offshore. It doesn't affect projects which are already up and running or are commenced. So it doesn't stop those that have invested and are continuing. Those leases continue, but there'll be no more new ones. So, and that's a big signal to the American investor that the Trump administration has no interest in that type of renewable energy at all. Now, my own view on this has always been if it worked, we'd find some way to make it work, but it doesn't work. And so it's more or less a political religion more than anything else. The whole renewable energy business goes on top of the climate change crack things that's going on, and that climate change all links into the woke cultural Marxist agenda that I talk about so often: men and women's sports, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and all this. This is big, has exploded onto the scene in the last few years. Trump has knocked the whole lot down, and it's a sort of proof in a way that these are all connected. They should have isolated energy if they could, but then if they did, they'd have to comply with the SEA directive in Ireland and Europe, and that would prove it's a scam. Anyway, that's the news from across the water. And here in Ireland, we have a company called Greencoat Renewables, PLC. And Greencoat Renewables was founded in 2017 by a man called Richard Norse, who's now gone. Nourse. He's gone. He's not there. I don't believe he's involved. If I am, correct me, but I don't think he is. He's not listed on any of their company anyway. It's currently managed by Paul O'Donnell and Bertrand Guter, Gauter. Paul O'Donnell and Bertrand Guter, and it has Dublin offices. They are partnered with an LLP, that's a limited liability partnership of Schroders, must be a German company or something, the financial investors, advisors. Now, the price of a Greencoat renewable share, when it started first, you could buy the shares at €1 or 100 euro cent. At that, there were 100 euro cent. And they did rise temporarily up as far as 108 and that sort of thing early on. But for the last 2 years, they've been below the euro. They've been dipping below the euro. And I've been reporting on them here quite often. And about a year ago, they were on about 89. That was an 11% loss on your share. And this morning, they're trading at 76 cents. That means for anyone who invested 100 euros, they only get 76 back. And if they invested that in 2018, let's say, when it was a new company, you'd have to adjust for inflation, and there's a big chunk of that gone, possibly as much as 25% gone from inflation as well. But even keeping the money constant, 24% is a big loss on your investment. Now, they'll live in hope that it's going to increase, but the activities of Donald Trump would seem to think it's not going to increase anyway in America. The effective banning of government support for renewable energy in America could have the effect of diverting any money there is to Europe and Ireland. So you'd have expected that to be happening, and we would expect that to happen. It could happen that, say, we can't invest in the US anymore, we're going to invest over in England and Ireland and Europe. So we'll see what happens. If that happens in the next while, we should see a rapid increase in the share price. But the problem is that the renewables are in the bad books of Europe. The government of Germany has collapsed. The economy of Germany is in free fall. There's talk of China buying over the German car manufacturer. There's talk of China buying over the German car manufacturers. It looks like there won't be any German car industry, or there won't be any industry in Germany, because they have acted in such a way to make it impossible for independent companies to make money by making their product or their chemicals or whatever. Now, one of the tricks up the sleeve of government, and it's very big in England, is to force you to buy what they want you to buy. The electric cars in England, next year there has to be 22% of cars sold electric, or there'll be a €15,000 fine for each electric car not sold. We'll see how that goes. But you get the idea. Traders can sell ordinary cars, internal combustion cars, but they have to sell a certain amount of electrics. And if nobody wants those electric cars, what's going to happen? The news I'm getting from the United Kingdom is they're not doing well. They're not selling well over there. Norway has a big electric car sales, but they have vast amounts of fuel. They're a very rich country. Vast amounts of coal and oil. A very good example of my theory that these are loss-making, disastrous investments was that John Lang, a company that doesn't deal in renewable energy, bought one wind farm new down in Glencairn, I think it was his name, place in Tipperary, and Glencarbury, I think was the name of it. They bought it anyway, and they were making losses, just as I had been finding for all 40 company accounts for wind farms I had checked in the years about 2018 to 2020. All making losses and propped up by parent companies. So when Lang couldn't get out, when Lang was set with something he couldn't sell, this company, Greencoat, which was set up in 2017, bought it. So they bought a known loss maker. So the question is, how were they going to make it turn into a profit-making regime? And this is a question that's very difficult to investigate, because they keep selling things. They sold one wind farm in Scandinavia recently, and they bought the South Mead solar farm, and they're still active in the market. But sometime I'll have a wee look at their company accounts, but I won't do it now. But at the same time, why is their share down to 76 euro cent? 76. That's a huge drop. Anyone who would buy those shares at 76 is liable to lose the whole lot. In my honest opinion, Greencoat Renewables is worth nothing, if you take all into account. Now remember how they're financed. They're given a guaranteed price. They're given a guaranteed price of about 76 cents, when the market price is about 64 cents. So if the price of electricity drops per unit to 64, the wind company has to get 76. And this is the same throughout Europe and the United States. So if the price of the fuel, if the price of the ordinary electricity, the coal, oil and gas rises and goes above the cost of the floor price, of the guaranteed price, in other words, it goes up to 80. So if it's 64, we'll say, the guaranteed price of 76 is what the wind farm gets. And if this rises up to 84, the guaranteed price no longer holds, and they get an increase to the cost of the most expensive fuel in the mix. So as fuel prices rise, the wind companies get their market price, get that price. And that means that no matter how the ball hops, they can't lose on the product, the cell. What they didn't know starting off was that the best they'll get out of it is 20%. You'll get 20% of the capacity of the wind farm out of it in a year because the wind doesn't blow enough. So you'll get that. So the other end of it then is that they get constraint payments. There's only a limited amount of wind energy can be let into the system. No media ever published this fact, and this is very interesting. Not even right-wing media ever published the fact that it's an admitted general principle of electricity generation that there has to be 34 to 36% of the grid supplied by reliable nuclear or fossil fuel power. So that means that only 66% can be wind or solar because it's not synchronous. But when it goes up against above 66%, they get constraint payments, which can run into many, many millions of pounds in England and many millions of euros in Ireland. The public it's hidden from the public. So the only time they don't get paid from the grid is when they cannot produce anything. But then they get other subsidies for having renewable energy, which helps along. But despite all of that, in the companies I checked a few years ago, and we'll go back to checking them again when I get time, despite all of that racket, they're still making losses. And every single company I have checked in Ireland and a few in Britain all have an auditor's report underneath that they wouldn't be able to continue. There wouldn't be a going concern were it not for the fact that a parent company is carrying them. So the ESB, National Toll Roads, other companies carry them along as a charity or an equitable thing. But Greencoat Renewables itself has no other business. It's not in the business of selling electricity from fossil fuel. It doesn't want that name. And as a result, its income has to come from either selling renewable energy, wind and solar, or selling and buying and trading the wind farms themselves. They have government blessing in Ireland, of course, and in the UK. But why then, if that's the case, is their share price on 76? If these wind farms have to be decommissioned when their time is up, who's going to pay for it? They make sure they don't own any land. It's the farmer owns the land or the landowner. They only lease the wind farm from them. And so when the wind farm reaches the end of its useful life, will the wind farm stay there and pay the millions to take it down? And if they don't, the farmer is stuck with the cost of taking it down and removing every bit of it. That's what the planning permission says. So folks, that's just on 13 minutes. So Trump is doing my work there. He's attacking the renewable energy. He'll kill it completely in America for at least 4 years. Not one of them will spend a penny because they'll get no government support. But what the Trump administration should do, and remember this halting of the consent for land and seas is temporarily pending a review. And I wish I could get through to the review people and point out these few things, because it's amazing how few people understand that concept, how it's actually paid for, that it only kind of the result of exorbitant energy prices. It has crippled, these energy prices have crippled Europe because there was no renewable capacity when the price of coal, oil and gas went up and when it got scarce, when Germany was stuck for gas and couldn't get gas, and when most of Europe was short of gas. The wind energy was no good because you couldn't produce the wind energy if you hadn't the fossil fuel electricity there. So it relies on fossil fuel. Whether the penny will drop with them on that, I don't know. But certainly it's crippling the economies in a big way. And Trump has made that point. There's no point in trying to rebuild industry if you can't have cheap, reliable electricity and energy. And he's doing that. And he does not regard wind energy or solar energy as any use at all. And I say that's the truth. I've spent 20 years pushing that to try and inform people that you can't do what they're trying to do. In Ireland, we had a Parliament meeting yesterday. It erupted in roaring and bawling and shouting at each other. There was a terrible fracas in the middle of the Dáil in the Parliament, and they still haven't formed a government. All of the efforts. It has reduced the Green Party in Ireland from 12 members in the Parliament to 1. It hasn't worked out because deep down it's not an issue with voters at all, and it's coming less and less and less of an issue as the cost of living comes at them. People are now choosing between energy and food. There's a lot of very poor people in the United States just barely able to feed their families. They can't afford cars or anything else. Ireland has not been struck that badly yet. But please remember before I go, the Irish government subsidises the electricity bill. It is, in my own case, in my own household, I must have got €1,500 of a rebate to help us pay for the expensive energy. So that's a bailout for wind energy. That's why it's so dear. They'll try and say it's the cost of fuel, but it's the cost of the whole thing. In England, on the other hand, the government has taken down, and in Britain altogether, taken away the winter fuel allowance. So how does it square that the British government, to save money, needs to take away the winter fuel allowance, and the Irish government has gone on a bonanza of subsidising electricity bills and gas bills for people? Look, doesn't look good to me. Comment underneath. Thank you very much. We'll see you back soon. Greencoat Renewables is now trading this morning at 76 cents for a 100-cent share. Bye. Thank you very much.